Now we are going to start the exercise of this lesson, children. Now do you remember I told you before I explain the answers in these exercise questions, you all have to do the exercise first. You have to write your own answers and then only you are going to watch this video so that you can check whether the answers written by you are right or wrong. Okay? We will start. So first we are going to start with the exercise given in the textbook. The first one. Fill in the blanks with the given words. So here the words given. Sources of sound, noises, sensitive, vibration, music, sounds, loud, ears. Sound is produced by, how does sound produce, children? You all know by now. Sound is produced by vibrating something, vibrating particles or vibrating materials, okay? So sound is produced by vibration of an object. Let's write. Vibration of an object. Objects that produce sound are known as, what is the name given? Sources of sound, right? Anything, any object that produce sound are known as sources of sound, okay? Sources of sound. Sources of sound. Ear is an organ which is sensitive to sound. Sound can be sensed by the ear. Okay, do you remember I told you the ear has special cells, right? These are known as sensory cells which can understand these vibrations. Okay, children? So ear is an organ which is sensitive to sounds. Sensitive. Rhythmic sounds are known as rhythmic sounds. So sound with a certain pattern or a rhythm are known as music. Music. And unrhythmic sounds are known as, what is the name given? Different sounds without a rhythm, without a special pattern, they are known as noises. Okay? Let's write. Rhythmic sounds are known as music. And unrhythmic sounds are known as noises. Right. By hearing loud noises, okay, by hearing loud noises, ears can get affected, right? Ears can get affected. By hearing loud noises, ears can get affected. It is our duty to use sound without disturbing others. Now, do you remember I explained you, even though music is pleasant to your ears, loud music can hurt our ears, right? It disturbs the others too, okay? So, loud noises can damage our ears. At the same time, you have to use sound without disturbing others. So, it is our duty to use sound sounds without disturbing others. Okay, children? So this was an easy one. We'll move on to the next. If the following sentences are true, put a tick, and if wrong, put a cross within the brackets. Let's go through this. Ear lobes help to direct sounds to the ear. This is true or false, children. Now, do you know what is the shape of the earlobe? Look at this one, earlobes. So, because of this special shape, it can collect sound waves, more and more waves. Okay. So, earlobes help to direct sounds to ear. This is correct. True. Right. The sound of a tabla is produced in the same way as in a violin. We'll go through this. How does a tabla produce its sound? Tabla is a type of drum. Right? So, drums produce sound by vibrating its skin or the membrane. Okay, so tabla produces sound by vibrating membranes. What about violin? Violin is coming under a string instrument. Okay, so string instruments, all the string instruments produce sound by vibrating strings. So tabla produces sound by vibrating membranes, but the violin produces sound by vibrating strings. Therefore, this is wrong. The sound of a tabla is produced in the same way as in a violin. That's wrong. The sound of a flute is produced in the same way as in a trumpet. Yes. So flute produces sound by vibrating air columns inside it. And the same way, trumpet also produces sound in the same way by vibrating air columns. Okay. So this one is correct. Most of the time, rhythmic sounds are not a disturbance to the ear. What is another name given to rhythmic sounds, children? Music. Most of the time, music or rhythmic sounds are not a disturbance to the ear. That is correct, right? It becomes a disturbance only when it becomes louder. Okay, loud music is a disturbance to your ears, but normally music is not a disturbance. Okay, it's pleasant to hear. So most of the time, rhythmic sounds are not a disturbance to the ear. That is correct. Next one. It is suitable for people who work in places of loud noises to wear ear protectors. This is also correct. Some people work in these different types of factories where loud sound is produced, right? So they have to wear these specific ear protectors to protect their ears. Okay? So this is also correct. Now we have discussed about the exercises given in the textbook. But we are going to do some additional exercises too. We'll move on to the additional exercises. Additional exercise 1. Underline the correct answer. So these type of questions, these are known as MCQs or multiple choice questions because you are given more than one choice answers. Okay. So you have to find out the most correct answer, children. Okay. So when you do these type of questions, sometimes there might be more than one correct answer, one correct choice. Okay. So then what happens? You have to underline the most correct answer or most suitable answer. Okay. We will go through this. The set of instruments that produce sound as same as a harp. What is a harp? Harp is a string instrument. You must have seen something like this. Strings present like this. So by vibrating the strings, we can produce sound. Okay, children? So this is a string instrument. So sitar, guitar, mouth organ. Sitar and guitar are string instruments. What about mouth organ? Mouth organ produces sound by vibrating air columns. Okay? So these are known as wind instruments. Right? So this is not the answer. Next one. Flute. Drum. Now flute is a wind instrument. What about drum? Drum produces sound by vibrating membranes or the skin. So this is also not the answer. Now cello is correct. Cello has strings and it's a string instrument. By vibrating strings, it produces sound. The next one. Violin, sitar, guitar. So all the three instruments are string instruments. They all produce sound by vibrating strings. As same as a harp. Okay, so this is the answer, but we are going to read the fourth one as well. Guitar, mouth organ, cello. Again, because of the mouth organ, this is not the answer. Okay, children? So the answer is number 3, violin, sitar and guitar. Number 2. The musical instrument given in the diagram is, what is this musical instrument, children? This is known as the sitar. This is a string instrument, which means we can produce sound by vibrating strings, okay? So this is sitar. Right, next one. Sounds that are not rhythmic are known as, now there are 2 types of sounds according to the rhythm. Sounds with a rhythm, right, or rhythmic sounds which are known as music and they are pleasant to your ears, and sounds that are not rhythmic are known as noises and they are unpleasant to your ears. So sounds that are not rhythmic not rhythmic, or there is no rhythm, are known as noise. So the other answers given: music, vibrations, waves. The correct answer is noise. Number 4. An artificial source of sound. What is the meaning of a source of sound, children? Something or an object that produces sound. So there are natural things that produce sound and artificial things also there are which produce sound, okay? So they ask an artificial source of sound, okay? The sound of birds. Now animals, plants, environmental factors, they are coming under natural things, right? So the sound of birds, natural source of sound. The sound of a dog barking, again an animal, that is also natural. School bells ringing. Now school bell is an artificial thing, a man-made object. Therefore, this can be the answer. We'll read the 4th one. The sound of the wind. Again, wind is a component, belongs to the nature, right? Therefore, this is a natural source of sound. So the answer is school bells ringing. Next one. Loud noises are blank for our ears. We'll go through these things. Loud noises are harmless. No, it's actually harmful. Pleasant. Loud noises are not pleasant as well. We'll go through the next 2. Harmful, unpleasant. Now look at these 2 answers, children. Loud noises are harmful for our ears. Loud noises are unpleasant for our ears. What is the now? Both of these answers are correct. Am I right? So even though both of these answers seems like correct answers, here you have to pick the most correct answer or the most suitable answer. Okay, children? So when you consider loud noises, it is basically very harmful to your ears. Unpleasant is also correct, but this 3rd answer is the most suitable or the most correct answer out of these 2 things. Okay, children? So I told you there's a certain age of these type of questions you have to find. There may be like answers, more than 1 correct answers. So out of the answers, you have to find the most suitable answer. Okay, children? So even though harmful and unpleasant both are correct, this 3rd one, harmful, is the most suitable or most correct answer. Loud noises are harmful for our ears. Number 6. The instance that does not make any sound. Shaking a yogurt cup with some marbles inside. A sound will produce here, right? Do you remember? We discussed about different ways to produce sound. So we discussed about this point too, right? So you can produce sound by shaking a yogurt cup with some marbles or some seeds likewise, okay? Crushing a piece of paper with the hand. When you crush, sound comes out, right? So this is also not the answer. Here the question asks the instance that does not make any sound. Bursting a balloon. Of course, there will be a sound, okay? Having a chair placed next to a table. Let's say a table is there, next to the table, chair is there. It's not an instance where sound is produced. If we drag the chair, it will produce sound, okay? But here, having a chair placed next to a table. This is not an instance where sound is produced. So this is the answer. Next one. Number 7. Not a string instrument. What is the meaning of string instruments again, children? The instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings, okay? So guitar is a string instrument. Mandolin is also a string instrument. Sitar is also a string instrument. What about piano? So when you press the keys of the piano, they are connected to the certain type of strings from the inside. But when these strings are vibrated, that is not the way the sound is produced, right? So inside this certain part called sound box, certain amount of air is trapped. So when you press the keys of the piano, what happens, children? As it's connected to certain string-like structures inside, so those string-like structures also vibrate. But that's not how the sound is produced. When these string-like structures vibrates, it can make the air trapped inside the sound box vibrates, and then only the sound is produced. Okay, children, therefore, piano is not coming under string instruments, okay, because actually the actual sound produced by vibrating the air column trapped inside. Okay, children. So, guitar, mandolin, sitar directly produce sound by vibrating strings. But piano, that's not the method. So, answer is piano. 8. The instrument given in the diagram produces sound by vibrating. What is this instrument? This is a trumpet. So, this can produce sound by vibrating the air column trapped inside. Therefore, the instrument given in the diagram produces sound by vibrating air columns. Yeah, the answers given: strings, membrane, metal, no. Air columns is the answer. Next one, the instrument that produces sound as same as a violin. Now, violin is a string instrument. You can produce sound with violin by vibrating the strings. So, you have to, as the answer, you have to find another string instrument. Tabla. Tabla produces sound by vibrating the membrane. Trumpet produces the sound by vibrating an air column. Melodica, that also produces sound by vibrating an air column. Okay. Sitar is a string instrument. So, by vibrating strings, sitar produces sound as same as a violin. Okay. Answer is sitar. 10. Not an instance where loud noise is heard. At the market, loud noise is heard. Now, loud noise means the sounds without a certain rhythm. So, at the market, the sounds that comes from the market has no rhythm, right? And when driving, again, it is unpleasant, not rhythmic. When playing the flute, now this is a pleasant type of sound because this type of sound is known as music, very pleasant to your ears. At an automobile repair shop, again, there are loud noises present in these type of areas. So the question asks, not an instance where loud noise is heard. So at the market, when driving, at an automobile repair shop, all these three instances, loud noise is heard. The only instance where loud noise is not heard is when playing the flute, because music is produced. Next one. While playing the guitar, which one is vibrated? When you play the guitar, now you all know the answer for this one. We did these type of questions many times, right? Guitar is a string instrument. So strings are vibrated when you play the guitar. Air, strings, membranes, metal bars. Answer number 2, strings. Number 12. Select the correct answer. Excessive noise. Excessive means too much noise, right? Excessive noise is good for the ear. No, this is not right. We all know that your ears should not expose to loud or excessive noise for a long period of time. Okay? Excessive noise is good for the ear. This is wrong. You have to select the correct answer. Excessive noise can lead to good health. That is also not correct. Do you remember what are the harmful health effects that arise because when you exposed to loud noise for a long period of time? Do you remember I told you your blood pressure increases, thereby you will get heart diseases or heart attacks, and sometimes you will get mental stress, right? So those are the harmful effects of excessive noise. Next one. Children should turn up the volume and watch the television. No, you have to control the volume. Okay, you should not turn up the volume, right? One should enjoy music without disturbing others. Now that is the answer. One should enjoy music without disturbing others. So that is the correct answer. Moving on to the next. 13. A source of sound is. A source of sound means a thing or an object that produces sound, okay? Ringing bell. That's correct. Pieces of paper. Just pieces of paper cannot make its own sound. Therefore, those are not sources of sound. Still water. No. When water is still, it doesn't make any sound, but flowing water can make sound, okay? Cardboard cones? No, they also can't produce sound. So the answer is ringing bell, okay? Next one. Which of the following is a method of preventing ear damage? Preventing ear damage due to loud noise. So how do you prevent your ears getting damaged due to loud noise, children? Most of the time you have to wear ear protectors, right? We'll look at these answers. Wearing earrings? No. Fixing a cone to the ear? No. Because when you fix cones, when you keep cones like this, you all know the sounds that you hear, the loudness increases, the intensity increases, right? Use of ear protectors, yes, this can be the answer. Wearing a hat to cover the ears, no. So the answer is use of ear protectors. Next one. A source of sound that used to drive away animals is. What is the answer, children? Do you remember we made different instruments that produce sound? Under that we made the clapperboard, or we call it Papaya too. So it is used in some areas to drive away animals who harm the crops, who harm the trees with fruits, okay? So a source of sound that used to drive away animals is violin, drum, clapperboard, stones. Clapperboard is the answer. So we completed additional exercise number 1. We are moving to exercise number 2 now. Additional exercises 2. Look at these pictures, children. The image below shows some of the instruments used to produce sound. Now, do you remember I explained y'all not only the things that you can find at home, sometimes there are natural substances that can be used to produce these type of instruments that produce sound. I explained how to make some of them too, okay? So look at this one. So what is this instrument, children? This is known as the coconut leaf flute, okay? How do we make it? Using tender coconut leaves. You have to wrap it as a cone and then you can make the flute like this, okay? What is this one? This one also I explained y'all. Using the papaya leaf stalk, you can make this type of, it's a type of whistle. This is known as papaya stalk whistle. What you have to do is you have to take the stalk of the papaya leaf. So you have to take the stalk of the papaya leaf. If this is the leaf part, you have to take only this part, right? You have to take this part and then you are going to make a whistle using that one. So this is known as the papaya stalk whistle. So what is this one? Sometimes, now I explained you how to make these first two things. Sometimes you can make different types of like the horn-like instruments using the stem of the paddy plant. Okay, children? So this is also using, you have to take the stem like the tube-like part of the stem and you have to make a small slit. Now you all know that even the papaya stalk whistle also you can make by taking this stalk part and then you have to, using a blade, you have to make a thin slit in the tube. Right? In the same way, you have to take the stem part, the tubular stem part of the paddy plant and you have to make a small slit like that. Right, children? So then you can use it as a whistle. So what do we have to do with this one? Write the names of the above instruments and mention the plant materials used to make them. Name them and then you have to write the plant materials used here. First we label these things. Right. So what is this? This is made using tender coconut leaves. Coconut leaf. Using one leaf you can make. This is the papaya stalk and this is the slit made. Right. This is the paddy or rice stem. And there we have to make another small slit. Okay, let's write down. So name of the first one, coconut leaf flute. This one, papaya stalk, papaya stalk whistle. This one, we call it rice stem flute. Okay. Plant materials. Here tender coconut leaves. Tender coconut leaves. This one, stalk of a papaya leaf. Okay, this one, using the stem of a paddy plant. Okay, write the names of the above instruments and mention the plant materials used. The first one, the name is coconut leaf flute. It is made by the plant materials used is tender coconut leaves. Okay. Second one, the name is papaya stalk whistle. What do we use to make it? Stalk of a papaya leaf. And the third one is known as rice stem flute. What do we use to make this one? Stem of a paddy plant. Okay, children? Right, we'll move on to the next. Exercise number 3. The picture shows a large tin with a hole drilled in the bottom and an iron rod hung from it. Do you remember we did this activity, children? We made the same instruments, okay? So, this is the large tin and this is the iron rod. So, you can hang this iron rod to the large tin using a strong wire. We will mark that too. So, this will be the strong wire. Strong wire. Okay, and the iron rod and the nylon thread. And I further explained that these type of instruments, equipment used to drive away animals in certain areas, people used to use these type of simple objects to drive away animals. So how do people drive away animals using this instrument, children? So you can see this nylon thread connected to the iron rod. When we pull that one, this iron rod contacts with the tin. So both are made of metals. It will make a loud noise and animals will move away. So we will go through the questions now. What is the name of this instrument? This is known as clapperboard or takaya. Let's write. Clapperboard. How does this instrument produce sound? Now I explained y'all. When you pull this nylon thread, this iron rod and tin contact with each other and it produces sound. Okay? So basically sound is produced by vibrating metal pieces. Okay? How does this instrument produce sound? When the nylon thread is pulled the iron rod and the tin contact with each other. Contact with each other. making loud sound. That's how sound is produced, okay? When the nylon thread is pulled, the iron rod and the tin contact with each other, making a loud sound, right? Write one use of this instrument. This is used to drive away animals that are coming to harm the trees with fruits, okay? Let's write. Let's write very simply. To drive away animals. To drive away animals. Okay? Write one use of this instrument to drive away animals. We'll move on to the next. Additional exercise number 4. Look at this picture. Now this experiment, this small activity also we did, okay? A few pieces of paper are placed on a small drum as shown in the picture. What happens to the small balls of paper when we beat the drum? What happens, children? You all saw that when we beat the drum, they move. These pieces of paper move here and there. You can even use small rigiform balls instead of the small pieces of paper balls, okay? So what happens to the small pieces of paper? They move here and there. They move here and there. What change should happen in the drum to make a sound like the one above? Now look at this. This drum is an instrument which can produce sound. Now we all know that in order to produce sound, what should happen, children? Something should be vibrated, a material, particles, likewise, okay? So in order to produce sound by the drum, what should happen? The drum membrane should vibrate because all the drums produce sound by vibrating membranes or the skin. So here what happens? In order to make sound, the membrane of the drum should be vibrated, okay? What change should happen in the drum to make a sound like the one above? The drum membrane should vibrate. The membrane of the drum should vibrate. Right? The membrane of the drum should vibrate. What change should happen in the drum to make a sound like the one above? The membrane of the drum should vibrate. What are the objects that produce sound called? Now, this object, so the things that produce sound are known as, what is the name given? Sources of sound, right? Sources of sound. Next one. Write 2 examples for such objects. But now you can write any musical instrument, children, because all the musical instruments can produce sound. So as examples, you can write musical instruments. Let's write 2 examples. No, we can write violin, piano, two examples for such objects, which means sources of sound. Okay? Right, we'll move on to the next. Additional exercise 5. We'll read this one first. 3 types of musical instruments are given below. We learned there are different types of instruments, musical instruments, based on the way they produce sound, right? So, 3 types given here. Musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings. These are known as string instruments. Musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns. These type of instruments are known as wind instruments. Musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes. Now there are types of instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes. These type of instruments are known as percussion instruments. Okay? Classify the following musical instruments according to the above 3 types and write the relevant number in the blank. You don't have to write the whole sentence. You have to write the number belong to the sentence according to the musical instrument. Okay? So, guitar. We'll go through the musical instruments first. Guitar, sitar, dowler, mouth organ, tammatama, rabana, trumpet, Cornshell horn, udakya, harp and flute. Right? So, let's go to the first one, guitar. Now, guitar is a type of string instrument. If you want to make sound, you have to strum the strings. So, you have to vibrate the strings. Therefore, guitar produces sound by vibrating strings. We will go to this list. Number 1 is musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings. Therefore, under guitar, what is the number you have to write? Number 1. Okay, because under number 1 only, musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings included. So, guitar, number 1. Number 2, sitar. What is sitar? Sitar is also a type of string instruments. Therefore, it produces sound by vibrating strings. That also goes under number 1. Dowler. Dowler is a type of a drum. How do they produce sound, children? All the drums produce sound by vibrating the membranes, right? So, look at the third one. Musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes. Okay? So, dowler comes under number 3. Next one. Mouth organ. How do you play the mouth organ? When you play the mouth organ, it produces sound by vibrating air columns inside. So, musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns. Number 2 goes under dowler. Tammatama. It's another type of drum. Okay, as same as dowler. Therefore, even for tammatama, as it produces sound by vibrating membranes, what is the number we have to write? Number 3. Rabana. Rabana is also a type of drum. Therefore, again, number 3. Trumpet. Now, trumpet produces sound by vibrating air columns, just like the flute. Okay, so trumpet, number 2. Cornshell horn, you must have seen sometimes in special occasions, right? Now, special occasions are most of the time started by lighting the oil lamp. So, by the time the chief guest light the oil lamp, sometimes some people, they play the Cornshell horn. So, it can produce a certain sound because when you blow air through that one, it can produce sound. So, Cornshell horn also produces sound by vibrating air columns trapped inside, right? So, Cornshell horn, musical instrument that produce sound by vibrating air columns. Number 2. Udakya. Udakya is a type of a drum. Okay, it's a type of a drum. Therefore, again, produces sounds by vibrating membranes. Number 3. What about harp? Is a string instruments. By vibrating strings, it produces sounds. Therefore, that goes under number 1. Flute. Flute is a wind instrument. Therefore, it goes under number 2. So, number 1, musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings. Now, according to this list, guitar, sitar and harp come in under string instruments. Okay. Number 2, musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns, which means wind instruments, right? So, number 2, mouth organ, trumpet, Cornshell horn and flute going under number 2, wind instruments, right? Number 3, musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes. Okay, so all the drums go under the third category. Daula, Tammatama, Rabana and Udakkiya. Right, children? I hope you understood this part. Additional exercise 6. If the following statements are correct, put a tick, and if wrong, put a cross within brackets. We will go to read through these things. The sound is directed to the ear by the ear lobes. Correct or not, children? This is correct. This is why, because of the special shape of the ear lobes, it can collect sound waves and direct to the ear. This is correct. We'll write. This is correct. The sound of the drum is produced in the same way as the trumpet. Is this right, children? The sound of the drum is produced by vibrating membranes, but the sound of the trumpet is produced by vibrating air columns. Therefore, these two instruments produce sound in two different ways. Therefore, this statement is not correct. Next one. By wearing earphones, one can enjoy music without disturbing others. This is correct. And when the sound of music is increased, it too can be a disturbance. This is also right. Okay, children, do you remember we learned that there are two types of sound, music and noise, right? Music is pleasant to your ears. That is because it is rhythmic. There is a rhythm. But when it comes to noise, it is unpleasant because there is no rhythm to noise, okay? But even though music is pleasant to your ears, if you increase the loudness, what will happen? It will become unpleasant. It is a disturbance. So when the sound of music is increased, it too can be a disturbance. That's right. Number 5. The violin and the sitar produce sound in a similar manner. Now, violin produces sound by vibrating strings. It's a string instrument. Even sitar is also a string instrument. They both produce sound by vibrating strings. Therefore, this is correct. Rhythmic sounds are called noises. No, rhythmic sounds are known as music, and unrhythmic or sounds without rhythm are known as noise. Okay, so this is not correct. Number 7. The sound is produced by vibrating something. Yes, particles, materials, right? The sound is produced by vibrations or vibrating something. And the last one, the eye is the organ that senses sound. No, eye can sense light, but ear can sense sound. Okay, therefore this is not correct. The sound is directed to the ear by the ear lobes. Correct. The sound of the drum is produced in the same way as the trumpet. Wrong. By wearing earphones, one can enjoy music without disturbing others. Correct. When the sound of music is increased, it too can be a disturbance. That's also correct. The violin and the sitar produce sound in a similar manner. Both are string instruments. Yes. Rhythmic sounds are called noises. No, that's known as music. Therefore, it's wrong. The sound is produced by vibrating something. Yes. And the eye is organ that senses sound. No, it should be the ear. Therefore, that's wrong. Okay. We'll move on to the next. Additional exercise 7. Recall the activity creating equipment to produce sounds and answer the following questions. Do you remember in the last chapter of the lesson, we learned how to make different equipment or instruments that make sound, okay? Write down the 3 types of equipment you intend to make. What are the 3 types of equipment, children? We made equipment. Actually, we made 4 types of equipment, but we are going to categorize them under 3 groups. Okay, children? What is the first type? Now, we made a box guitar, right? Guitar with a cardboard box and tin guitar also made. So, guitars are type of string instruments. They produce sound by vibrating strings. And drums like instruments, they produce sound by vibrating membranes. Okay? And other type is by vibrating air columns also, certain instruments produce sound, okay? So write down the 3 types. Now there's a 4th type too. What is the 4th type, children? Do you remember, like in the clapperboard, sound is made by vibrating metal pieces, right? But when we learn this one, we are going to categorize it under 3 things. We are going to categorize it under string instruments, right? String instruments means the instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings. And then wind instruments, or the instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns. And the 3rd type is known as percussion instruments. Percussion instruments are the instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes or vibrating metals. Okay, so that is categorized under the same group. So we will write down the 3 types of equipment you intend to make. Number 1. The instruments produce sound by vibrating strings. Number 2, the instruments produce sound. The instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns. And finally, the instruments produce sound by vibrating membranes or metals. Write down the 3 types of equipment you intend to make. The instruments produce sound by vibrating strings, the instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns, and the instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes or metals. Okay? The next one. Write down the criteria for awarding the marks explained by the teacher before the activity. Now we are talking about this creating equipment to produce sounds. Now remember, children, at school you will be doing this as an assignment, right? Your science teacher will ask you to make these instruments. The teacher will instruct you how to make these things using different methods, right? And you will be given marks too. The teacher will award marks for your instruments too. Okay, children? So write down the criteria for awarding the marks explained by the teacher before the activity. Now, if you haven't done this before, your teacher will explain how the marks are given, right? Let's say if 20 marks are given, all the 20 marks are not given to the instrument itself. The teacher will observe certain things. So what are the things? Now, all the marks will be categorized under different parts and then only the marks will be given. Okay, children? So, because this is an assignment, okay? So, how can we, now the children who already have done this activity at school as an assignment, you all know this, right? So, how to award these marks, children? So, your teacher must have given certain types of, certain mark for creativity. Then teacher must have awarded marks for the materials that you use. Teacher must have asked you to make these things with the materials that are available, readily available, or with the waste materials, or with eco-friendly materials likewise. Okay, so you don't have to buy things anew. As I explained you all can do these activities with the things that you can find around your house. Okay, children? So what is the other one? For the neatness or the nice finishing also, you will get some points. What else, children? For the performance of the equipment. So whether they work or not, based on that also, teacher must have given you marks. Okay, so those are known as criteria, different ways, different certain topics that you get marks for. You will get all the marks, the total marks. Teacher will divide into different groups and then only teacher will give you marks, total marks, right? So these different groups are known as criteria. Okay, so write down the criteria for awarding the marks explained by the teacher before the activity. Let's write. So the first one, there are different criteria. We will write some of them. The materials used. Materials used. And let's say creativity. Creativity. You can design your own equipment. Not only the equipment given in the textbook, you can design your own equipment. So for that, you will get some points, right? And let's say neatness. Neatness. So even though you make these type of instruments with waste material, you can nicely cover them. Let's say that if you use the cardboard box to make the box guitar, you can nicely cover the cardboard box with some like colored paper, or with you can draw pictures. Likewise, you can decorate it, right? The neatness is important. So neatness, so let's say nice finish. Functioning of the equipment or the instruments. Functioning of the equipment. Okay. Likewise, the materials used, creativity, neatness, so nice finish, functioning of the equipment. Likewise. Okay. We'll move on to the next. Write down 3 things to consider when choosing the raw materials to design the instruments. Now, do you remember when I was explaining these different types of equipment, I told you, you don't have to buy things from the stores. So for all these activities, most of the time, you all can use the waste materials. You can use whatever readily available at home, easily available things. Okay, children? We'll write some of them. You have to write 3 things to consider. Using waste materials. Waste materials. What else? Materials should be easily available. Or we can simply write materials that are easily available. Easily available. What else, children? Eco-friendliness. Eco-friendly materials. Okay, using waste materials, materials that are easily available, eco-friendly materials, right? We are asked to write only 3. Okay, children, we'll move on to the next. Exercise number 8. Sound energy is a form of energy. I hope you remember this one. In the second lesson, we learned that the things in the environment can be divided into 2 parts, that is matter and energies. Matter and non-matter are known as energies again. Why do we divide into, you remember, children? Matter means the things with a mass and that occupy space. But energies don't have a mass and they don't occupy space too, right? So sound is a form of energy. Man uses sound energy in various ways, okay? Briefly explain how sound is produced. Now we all know the answer for this one. How sound is produced, children? By vibrating something. Okay? Let's write. Sound is produced by vibrating something. Okay? Sound is produced by vibrating something. Define what sources of sound are and write 2 examples for sources of sound. Define what sources of sound. What is the meaning of sources of sound? Anything or any object that produce sound are known as sources of sound, right? The things, objects that produce sound, are called sources of sound. Examples, sources of sound, we can write musical instruments, guitar, drums. You can write anything. Write musical instruments, okay? Define what sources of sound. The things or objects that produce sound are called sources of sound. And 2 examples we asked to write, guitar and drums, right? We'll move on to the next. Exercise number 9. Let's go through this. What is the name given to the musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings? Now, we discussed this before. So, what is the name given to the musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings? These are known as string instruments. And give an example. Now, we know a lot of examples. We will write this first. String instruments. String instruments. Example. We know a lot. We will write guitar. What is the name given to the musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns? Give an example. Air columns, we call them wind instruments, right? Wind instruments. Wind instruments. Example. Let's write flute. And third one. What is the name given to the musical instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes? Do you remember I explained you in the previous activity that the instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes and also the metal bars can be categorized under the same group. That is known as percussion instruments. Okay, let's write percussion instruments. Give an example. Let's write any type of drum we can write, okay? Bass drum. The name of the instruments that produce sound by vibrating strings are called string instruments. Example, guitar. The instruments that produce sound by vibrating air columns are known as wind instruments. Example, flute. And instruments that produce sound by vibrating membranes are called percussion instruments. Example, bass drum. Right? We'll move on to the next. Right, children. This is the last exercise of this lesson. Exercise 10. Look at this picture. Do you remember we made this instrument, children, using a tin and a balloon membrane? Okay? What can be used as air to make this instrument? Now, this is a tin. What is this, children? We have to use a balloon membrane, okay? Let's write. A balloon membrane. A balloon membrane. Okay? Next one. What can you tell about the sound produced in each instance? Now, do you remember when I was explaining this in the lab? When I stretch this balloon membrane more, what happened to the sound produced? The intensity is very high, right? We can hear the sound better. But what happens when I reduce the stretchness of the membrane, children, the balloon membrane? The intensity gets lower. So, what can you tell about the sound produced in each instance? Which means when the balloon membrane is stretched and when it is not. Let's write. When the balloon membrane is stretched well, when the balloon membrane is stretched well, the intensity of the sound produced is high. When the balloon membrane is not stretched well, the intensity of the sound produced is low. When the balloon membrane is stretched well, the intensity of the sound produced is high. When the balloon membrane is not stretched well, the intensity of the sound produced is low, right? Next one. Which type of matter vibrates in A? Now we learned that matter, there are three forms: solids, liquids and gases, okay? So when we consider A, the balloon membrane, it comes under solid matter, right? Let's write. Which type of matter vibrates in A? Solid matter. Okay. Number 4. Write 4 other instruments that make sounds in this way. Now you know that this instrument produces sound by vibrating a membrane, the balloon membrane in this case. So we have to write examples for other instruments that produce sound in the same way, which means by vibrating membranes. Let's write the examples. We can write examples for different types of drums, okay? Let's write bass drum, bongo, tabla, rabana, you can write other examples too. Bass drum, bongo, tabla, rabana. Right. Number 5. What part vibrates when the flute is played? Now when you play the flute, what happens? An air column trapped inside is vibrated, okay? So what part vibrates when the flute is played? Flute is a wind instrument. That is because it produces sound by vibrating air columns, right? What part vibrates? An air column. An air column vibrates. Okay? Right, children. Now we have completed the whole lesson. So do you remember what we discussed under this lesson? We learn about how sound is produced, how we can hear sound, different types of sounds, and we even learn how to make different types of instruments. Now remember, children, we did many activities under this lesson. You all can do these activities at home. Even earlier I explained you all that All these activities we did during the lesson, you all can do at home and you can practice them again and again, right? And I told you before you do the exercise, you all have to write the answers by yourselves and then watch the explanation. I hope you would have done in the same way, right, children? So if you made any mistakes, what you all have to do is you have to read the certain parts of the lesson and improve your knowledge and try to answer the same questions again. When you answer these type of questions several times, I'm sure you will understand this lesson better.